Hi guys, welcome back. I am here with the most requested guest ever on the channel. It's Danny T Radio. How you doing, Danny?
I'm doing good. I'm glad to finally do this. I know you asked a couple months ago, and I was a little busy then, but my schedule is good now, so let's do it.
Yeah, fantastic. And like I say, I think we've got a cross section of people who watch yours and watch mine, and yeah, they've been absolutely bugging me to get you on. So I'm really pleased to finally do this and actually finally virtually meet you.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. I can't wait.
That's great. So, all right, give people a little bit of a background on you. How did you get into soccer? How did you start out?
So my older brothers played soccer, and my older sister played soccer, and I wanted to be just like them. And when I was 6, I finally got that chance to play. My parents signed me up for the little Pee Wee League. And I did a couple other sports growing up. I played basketball. I did swimming, but soccer was really number one for me all the way, until I got into running later on. But as far as watching soccer, I didn't have I think it was Fox Soccer Channel, so I wasn't really I didn't get a lot of exposure to the EPL and the other bigger leagues in America or bigger leagues in Europe. And pretty much what I was exposed to was just the Chicago Fire. They were on the local channels, and I was able to watch them. And when you're young, you think the whole world revolves around you and where you live. So I thought they were the biggest team in the world. So that's how I got into it. It was just a pretty typical story of wanting to be like my brothers and playing with them.
Fantastic. Yeah, and like I say, you're absolutely right. You've captured that. When you are young, you have one team you can see, and then that is everything. It's your whole world, isn't it? So, yeah, the Fire's not a bad one to start off with as well. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was weird because they won the championship in their first ever season, which was 1998.
Wow.
And I just kind of thought we're going to win it every year then from this point on. And we almost did in the beginning because we made it back to MLS Cup in 2000 and then again in 2003. So, yeah, the Fire were really good back in the day, but it's been a rough couple of years since then. We're going on 13 years now of just pain and misery, but that's part of it.
We'll come to that, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
When did you start watching stuff outside of just Chicago Fire?
I think I really started getting back into MLS because I watched the Fire, but I think it was probably around the 2000 maybe 5 or 6 season when I started seeing the game of the week on ESPN, and I started to that's kind of when I figured out how to use the internet, because before then it wasn't even allowed on the family computer then, so I'd always go and check the standings of league back then. So mid 2000s is when I really started to get into it. And I played soccer throughout high school. But then after high school, I was done. I focused on running and I ran track in college. But I was still all in on MLS. And at this point, now I could watch other leagues, and I tried and I just couldn't get into it. I just didn't have the connection, and I was just all in on MLS.
That's great. And I think that's come up a few times on these sort of interviews where connection is really the big thing that pulls people in. And if you try something and it doesn't ring for you, then forget it, put it to the side. But then if you find something, there is a connection there, then you're in, you're hooked. And then you can just ride that out, forever, can't you? So how did you get into start making videos about MLS?
It was a mental breakdown, really, was the start of it.
Right, okay.
So yeah, and I love telling this story now. But so I used to work in radio, hence the name Danny T Radio. And I was full-time night position up in Vermont, and then I got let go. New company came in, bought the station, and just immediately replaced me. And that's not really unique to just me. That just happens in radio. All of my friends that have worked in the radio field have similar stories. So I left Vermont. I moved back home in with my parents. which is, I had to do it, but it definitely was not ideal.
Yeah.
Um, and I was just doing the same thing every day. I was, wake up, go to work, come home, fill out like resumes and type up cover letters and send those out. And it's a dark time. I mean, anyone that's been in between jobs or been let go from a job can probably relate. It's tough because, you know, sometimes you're just waiting to hear something, even like waiting to hear rejection would be fine, but
Yeah.
most of the time you don't get anything back. And it was just going on weeks and months of this, and eventually, like, I'm talking about like screaming in the pillow, like freaking out. And I just I called work and said I'm not going to be able to come into work tomorrow, and the next day I told them,
Mm.
but I needed a break. And something that I've always wanted to do was make YouTube videos. And I thought, all right, I'm just going to sit down and do it. And I spent all day working on my first video, like from
Cool.
wake up to going to bed. And when I published it, I just had like the biggest rush of dopamine. It was
Yeah.
amazing feeling, and I just got addicted right then and there. And at that point, like, I just kind of stopped caring about radio. So I would still do the same routine that I was doing: wake up, go to work, come home, and type out resumes and cover letters. But the whole time I was thinking, like, oh, what's going to be my next video? Like, what should I do this
Yeah.
time?
Yeah.
And I just started chipping away at it, and I just got hooked and addicted. And I just years later, I'm still doing it.
It's fantastic. Yeah, you tapped into another passion there, and then that's hooked you, and that's all you need, isn't it? And then you'll just
Oh
keep
yeah.
going. It's self-perpetuating. Then it starts to gain traction. Then, well, yeah. How long did it take you before you sort of found an audience, and how they started interacting, and you got some big numbers?
So the first video probably got like maybe 10 views after the first day. And anyone that's starting off on YouTube knows it's a struggle. It's a grind. People don't
Oh
automatically
yeah.
know about your channel. And the only way to change that is to just keep pushing out more videos. The first video where it was like, wow, people are actually watching this was the Red Bull New York video. I did remember when Metro Stars rebranded to Red Bull. And on the
Yeah.
first day, I got 500 viewers.
Wow.
500 views. And like that was like
Serious.
the
Yeah.
total number of views that I had across all my videos up to that point. I was like, oh my God, like I'm going viral. Which, like, obviously
Yeah.
not quite, but for me that was. And it was just so
Absolutely.
exciting.
Yeah.
And then I just kept grinding at it and grinding at it. And the one video that really popped out was right at like the 1 year mark of making videos, and it was Rest in Peace Chivas. And that talks about the old club Chivas USA and how they came about, and then why they went under. And that one started blowing up like none of them have before. I talked about being happy with a couple hundred viewers.
Mm.
That one I was up to about 10,000 views after like the first week, which
Wow.
was just something crazy to me, something I've never experienced before. And
Huge.
I just kept refreshing the page, just seeing like the view count go up and seeing the comments go up.
Yeah.
And right after that is when I became monetized. And I just thought, like, this is great. Like, all my videos are going to be like this now.
Yeah.
This is going to be a legit career for me. This could be a job for me.
Yeah.
And that's not how YouTube works. You get as high as the highs are, you get brought down to earth real quickly when you post a video that you think is going to be big, but then it just doesn't get the views that you are expecting it.
Mm.
So great feeling with that video, and then real humbling shortly after that. And I do think COVID affected that a little bit because I'm trying to remember when I published the Chivas video, but it was right before, I think, the 2020 season. And then shortly after is when COVID hit. And
Yeah.
I think everyone's channel just kind of took a hit from that. But so Red Bull was the first video that made me realize, like, oh, okay, this is possible. And then Chivas was the first video that I actually started to gain lots and lots of subscribers from.
Are they still up? Can people still see those?
Oh yeah, yeah. I have only I've taken down one video, and I haven't fully deleted it. I took down my shorts just because I'm not sure how to really implement those.
Yeah.
I see a lot of people with success posting the shorts, but I have not. Um, I did take down one video because it talked about Grant Wall. And he recently passed away at the World Cup. And I was like,
Yeah.
I mean, I have him plastered on the thumbnail, and the way that I talk about him, maybe it's just not as appropriate. So I don't know what I'm gonna do with that one, if I'm gonna repost it or edit that part or what. But I really didn't think it was you know respectful to keep that one up. But
Yeah.
all of them, yeah, all the rest of them are still posted.
Fantastic. People can go and see that, and it's good that you've been proactive with being sensitive about those sort of issues, because that's absolutely right. I think, and I think it's very good, very astute. So let's get on to MLS. Something which I think you know a little about.
I hope so.
Sounds like more than me, anyway. All right. Well, I'm going to start off with a contentious one now. So, what is the biggest thing that bugs you about MLS?
Good question. I like that. I think some of the roster rules are a little convoluted. I think you recently made a video explaining how the salary cap works and the TAM
Yeah,
the Gam, if I'm not mistaken,
that's right. Yeah,
which was a great video.
thank you.
I appreciate it. I learned something from it.
Oh,
It's
wow.
just it's hard for people who aren't already fully, you know, into this to try to explain to them, to understand, to have them understand how it really works. Because it's not like a normal league or a league that you would think of. There
Yeah.
are a lot of things. And while I agree with some of them I'm just like, okay, we gotta tone this down. There's too much convoluted mumbo jumbo going on with the salary rules. So I would really like to see MLS just simple it simple it down and um, raise the salary cap and think, rethink the DP rule. I think the DP rule has been fantastic for MLS. I
Yeah.
do think it's time to, start maybe adjusting that idea. And I'm not going to say to fully get rid of DPs. I'm not even going to say to add another DP, but I think the regulations of it are still a little strict. So I would like to see that.
Do you think that the potential Messi transfer could be the catalyst for some sort of change in that department?
It definitely could be. I mean, they created the DP rule basically just to bring David Beckham over here because his roster, his salary alone would have, bankrupted everyone. So they created this rule, the DP rule, and good for MLS for saying, okay, this applies to everyone. Everyone can get it, and that's when we really started to see a lot of the bigger names. And at that time, it was the bigger, kind of older players to come into MLS. But we're starting to see that shift a little bit into more of younger guys trying to springboard into the bigger leagues. And I think that's the right direction to go. But bringing Messi, I don't care how old he's going to be at this point. I got to double check. He's, got to be in his upper 30s though. But yeah, do whatever you can to get him in here. And if that means tweaking the rules, I think you got to do it because MLS, as much as I, despise the retirement league moniker that it gets from other people, there's no doubting that you still need big names to put, butts in the seats, even if it's casual fans that aren't fully invested. And still, the more eyes that you can get on MLS, the better. So I think Messi coming would be real great.
I think I absolutely agree. I think the Beckham thing was a big step forward. I think the Messi could be the catalyst for the next big step forward. And it's interesting you mentioned the retirement league thing there because I think it is something that is getting less justified. And I think there is definitely a sort of relaxing from a UK point of view. There has been a sort of UK snobbery, a gatekeeping about football, about soccer, and not looking at the MLS seriously. I think that really is starting to change. But I also think that the retirement thing retirement home thing in Monaco is getting unfair. I mean, if you look this week, we're recording this in the week where we saw Chiellini and Ricky Puig have a bit of a spat. Yeah, after the last game, and with Chiellini calling Puig a clown, which I think it's great drama, and I think it's exactly what football needs. You need these sort of rivalry things here, but Ricky Puig, someone who was in their prime and could have gone anywhere in the world, chose to come to MLS. Whereas Chiellini, maybe at the end of his career, he won a lot and then came over. So you got one side, two sides of that, sort of scales there. I think there's definitely an element that people do want to come and play here because it is a great league to play in.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, some people will find something and stick with that till their death. And there's some things that MLS just will not be able to shake off, according to some people. And that's fine. The league just has to move on forward and keep proving them wrong. And you mentioned the European snobbery. There's definitely a little bit of MLS snobbery too towards the, lower leagues and USL and League One. So it happens all around the world. But I do think MLS is definitely moving in the right direction. I mentioned before, kind of becoming the springboard to the bigger leagues. I just think there's a lot of really exciting young talent in MLS, and it's a fun time to be a fan.
Absolutely, yeah. Some really, really talented young guys. They're really exciting times. There's a good few. I mean, I think that even just I picked up on, and I'm not, not looking at this 24/7, but there's some real superstars ready to flourish on that stage. And I hope for the MLS sake that they stay there for a bit. They don't immediately get poached by European teams and go off around the world. But though that is good, from an ambassadorial point of view, to have them nurtured in MLS, I think does them good too.
Yeah, that is a really tricky part for MLS. Because if you do sell off all these players, you do make the profit, but you do need a face of the league, and the face of the league can't always be 33, 34 years old. I think the league needs another Landon Donovan type player. Not going to be Christian Pulisic, so let's stop holding our breath for that. But or any of the super young USMNT guys, but someone to be able to bring the league together. It is going to take a player that's in their prime. Javinko a couple years ago for Toronto, I thought he was just so much fun to watch, and Ricky Puig is great. I don't know if he's not at that status yet where everyone really knows him. So I think if MLS can find that next face of the league, if he's young enough, if he's got enough of a personality, because that is something also that MLS is lacking a little bit. Not a ton of villains right now in the league. I know, I'm sorry, going back to, your previous question about things I would, change about MLS. I do think MLS needs a little bit more villainy, if that makes sense. A couple years ago, there was Steven Lenhart. Everyone loved to hate him. And he was awesome. He was so much fun to watch. Carlos Ruiz, Zlatan was great at that role.
Yes.
A little bit lacking right now as far as the big personality that everyone can rally around to dislike. But yeah, I still think MLS is in a good spot with how many young, exciting players there are.
I absolutely agree, and especially on the villainy point. I hadn't really realized, and now I've started to think about it. There's so many good examples of this, and when it does happen, if the villain's on your team, you love them. You love being behind the villain. The fact that they can antagonize everybody else in the league, you think this is brilliant. So it's an absolutely wonderful thing.
Fun.
And you love to hate them as well. So there's people booing from the sidelines. It makes a good atmosphere. It's great.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, all right, other side of the coin. What's the one thing that's different in MLS to normal other leagues that you absolutely love? What would you never change?
Playoffs. Oh man, the playoffs are the most fun time of the year for me. And I know that they keep changing the format, and I don't love the format that they've got proposed right now with going from single elimination, the best of three, then back to single. It's a little bit of a mess, but I love the playoffs. And another, fun story. I'll try to keep this brief, but it was Christmas time. Like maybe 1999 or 2000, but I remember I got FIFA 2000 for
Cool.
Christmas. And
Yeah.
I started a season with the first team I saw, which was Arsenal. And my brothers played with me. It was a really great bonding experience. We made it throughout the whole season. We were in second place, like heading into the last game. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, we're not gonna win the league, but that's okay. Playoffs are coming. We'll beat them in the playoffs. We played the last game, and it was like that was it. And I just remember being so mad because I was a kid at this point, and I wasn't
Yeah.
aware of how it worked around the world. And it was my brother that told me, like, no, it's not the game that forgot it. Like, they don't have playoffs in Europe. And I was like, that's
Yeah.
the stupidest thing ever. Kind of from that point on, I just lost interest in European soccer just as a
Yeah.
whole because I love the playoffs. I think it's so uh, captivating. The idea that your whole season can come to an end from one bad mistake in the back or one moment of brilliance.
Yeah.
And I think every league in the world should adopt playoffs. I think it would really improve a lot of things because that's one of my gripes about certain leagues. Maybe not this year with the Bundesliga because Borussia Dortmund might take it, but it was like 10 years in a row where it was whereas Bayern. And
Yeah.
I lose interest in that when I know someone's going to win the league before the year even starts. If they
Yeah.
had a playoff system in that, which I think I've heard that they are uh, toying with the idea, but I think every league should have playoffs. I think it would really improve things.
I think certainly towards the end of the season, you get some horrible matches. You get some
Mhm.
really terrible, nothing to play for. Players, if they've got an international tournament coming up, they're just giving 50% because no one wants to get injured and everyone's looking forward
Yeah.
to their holiday. And towards the end, there's just nothing. And if you're safe in the
Mhm.
league, nothing to play for. But if you've hit sixth in the league and suddenly you've got a playoff coming up, and
Yeah.
actually you could still win MLS Cup, you win whatever your cup is in your place. It's going to liven it all up. I think that's it's a real antidote to that sort of season petering out and sort of just going away.
Yeah, and a lot of people have that issue with MLS. They say, "Well, there's nothing to play for without promotion relegation," and I
Yeah,
say, "No, there's still the playoffs." And I think there's too many teams that make the playoffs, but on the flip side, that gives everyone something to shoot for at the end of the year because it's tough to be like fully eliminated from the playoffs, before the season actually ends. And I'm not saying that one system is definitively better than the other, but the lack of playoffs in other leagues, I agree that it can lead to the lack of intensity if you're not, fully competing for the title.
yeah.
And the lack of relegation in MLS can do the same thing. So no one system is perfect. But I do think that's a valid point you brought up.
Yeah, I mean, there are some leagues in the UK that they have a playoff at the end of the season. So the bottom two teams will go down,
Mhm.
and then the third bottom will play the top teams. So the third place team in the league below to see who actually takes the place in the higher division. So I think that's a really fun way of doing it as well because it adds an extra dimension.
And I think I've seen somewhere that like those games, no matter who's playing, have the highest TV ratings of like the whole season.
Absolutely,
It
yeah,
makes
yeah,
sense because the most is on the line. So
yeah. And the
yeah,
playoff
I
final,
think
that and the playoff final for the championship to go up into the Premier League,
mhm,
that always gets mega, mega viewers. They always call it the most rewarding game in football or the most expensive game in football because the winner of that just gets so much cash.
oh
It's
yeah.
unbelievable. Yeah, it's get that step up. And then because they have obviously it's gone on weeks longer than the end of the season, they've got a very short window to build a Premier League team then. So it's
Mhm.
quite a rush and it's a great media thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I completely agree with that. And I would love to see something similar in MLS. I just don't know how they
Mm.
would be able to do it.
So do you think it's are you pro rel in MLS?
I'm not someone that says it absolutely needs it. I think in a perfect world, I'd say yeah. I just
Mm.
don't see it ever happening.
Yeah.
When you've got the owners that have paid, this last one paid $500 million for San Diego to get into MLS, $500 million. And now you're going to tell them, hey, you might lose out on a lot of money by going down to the second division.
Yeah.
MLS, they built this way for a reason, and it's been pretty sustainable.
Mm.
Look at the valuations for all the teams. I know not everyone is making money, but the idea is making money yet that someday they
Yeah,
will.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
These teams, some of them are making more than some of the teams in the big five leagues. It's
Absolutely, yeah.
wild, crazy. So I would love to see MLS have a promotion relegation if it was, with USL Championship, or if they were to just keep expanding and get so
Mhm.
big where it goes MLS 1, MLS 2. I would love to see that. I just don't think it's ever going to happen. I don't think it's possible. And I've seen some other people like pitch ideas of having regional leagues, and that just never really excited me.
Nah.
I like the idea of watching, LA versus New York, or Chicago versus a team in the West that they don't normally see. I like
Yeah.
that. I don't like the idea of being confined to playing the same 15, 10 teams the whole season. So I know people have ideas. I don't think, in my crystal ball, I don't see it happening.
Yeah, no, I absolutely get what you mean. I can see, yeah, and obviously there's huge vested interest there, which means it isn't going to happen. I can
Mhm.
see how it might be really fun if it did happen. Seeing some of the, some of, like you said, the USL teams coming up and having a new name in there, and that being exciting. But
Mhm.
yeah, I can also see that it does come with its problems, and it's got its own attractions. So I don't think it necessarily needs it either.
Yeah, and MLS is coming up on a interesting time. I think for sure, I'd be willing to, at this point, bet my life on it that 30 teams is not going to be the last team. That they're going to keep going up to 32 teams. I mean, the NFL has 32 teams. I think the NHL has 32 teams now. They've figured out a way to make it work, and they're going to make it work with MLS. But something that I've seen said several times, like on the Athletic and other journalists, is that the new wave of expansion isn't necessarily going to be adding new teams. It's going to be improving some of the older teams, including
Right.
my Chicago Fire. I mean, you look at the attendance numbers; they're kind of always near the bottom, and part of that
Yeah.
is sucking for 12 years. Will do that. It will take away a lot of the fans.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of markets with a lot of untapped potential. With New England, if they get a new stadium in Boston, that's going to solve a lot of it.
Mm.
And with some other teams, it's just improving the marketing, the ownership levels. Because I look at a team like Sporting Kansas City before they were Sporting Kansas City, and when they were the Kansas City Wizards, playing in Arrowhead Stadium, is with 10,000 fans, and then they go play in a uh, community America ballpark. It's a minor league baseball stadium, and now they have one of the most dedicated, supportive fan bases in all of MLS. And the Columbus Crew also, they
Yeah.
had their low moments, but then the new owners came in, quickly won an MLS Cup, and that new stadium is rocking. It's awesome. I haven't been there. I definitely need to be there, but every time I watch it on TV, I'm just so impressed and so thankful that people came through um and helped that team out. And I think every market has that potential, because there's no denying it. There are some markets that are kind of lagging behind, and not just in the results department, but with the overall excitement level. And a lot of those are some of the older teams.
Mm.
And I think if MLS can really, um, what's the word? I don't want to say upgrade, but if MLS can figure out a way to really bring out the excitement, then yeah, we're going to see a big explosion in MLS.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think it's been, but if you just take case in point, the last few expansion teams, I mean, St. Louis, the support there has been absolutely
Mhm.
phenomenal. Same with Charlotte. I mean, they're filling their stadium. They've got rampant fans. There's tons of them. There's Austin. It's why is it that those new teams? Is it just the pent up demand and the excitement of it all, waiting for it to happen, or is it just those areas are starved of sport, or what do you think it is with them?
I wish I had a better answer for you other than I'm not 100% sure. I think
Yeah.
both things that you said are very true. I think because you look at a team all the way back in 2009, Seattle Sounders, when they came in, they recently, if I'm
Mm.
not mistaken, had just lost the Supersonics, the basketball team, the NBA.
Right,
The
right.
Mariners, they kind of have, been really, really bad since 2001. They made the playoffs last year. Good for them. But they have been really bad for a long time. And I think the people of Seattle were just starving of a team to really get, latched onto. And
Mm.
I think also a lot of people just underestimate how much people love soccer in this country.
Yeah.
Um, and it's really fun and it's easy to get attached to a new team, uh, where they're all in. If you buy into MLS, if you pay $325 million to get into MLS, yeah, they're probably going to take it seriously and they're probably going to want this to work. Meanwhile, I'm sorry to keep ripping on some of the older markets, but um, some teams, they're almost invisible in their market. So it's tough to become a fan of that team because you don't know how to follow them. With the newer teams, it's a lot easier.
Mm.
It's fun to be a part of something. It's fun to be a part of
Yeah.
something new and to be
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
from the beginning. So I think the new MLS teams that have all come in have done great. And as long as they are somewhat competitive, fans are going to continue to come. We've seen some teams come in and, the excitement is there. And then later on, some fans start to kind of drift away. You start to see the stadium pull in less numbers, but most of that is due to just poor performance. And that's, how sport works. Not everyone's going to be a winner. But yeah, I think the new markets, all of them have just done a fantastic job of really bringing in everyone to watch. And it's not just soccer fans. I have some friends at home that started following their team. I'm like, "Hey, I've been trying to tell you about MLS for 20 plus years. Now you got a team in St. Louis and now you're into it." Um, yeah, and it's just it's a fun time to be a fan of a new team that comes into your city. It's really fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. It is really fun to be at the start of something and be part of a group that is brand new and you're finding your culture. I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I think that is a really, really good point. I think that St. Louis have done a brilliant job of being the new team as well because they've done, they're smashing expectations. They've had some superstars in there, which are not necessarily weren't household names beforehand, but they've really shown, that they can really do it. So, yeah, I think that's a very, very good point.
Yeah, and I will be first to raise my hand and say, yeah, I totally doubted St. Louis on the field. I knew their support was going to be great, but
Mm.
you mentioned it. They didn't really have a lot of household names on that roster. And when they say that they want to play this style, we'll see. We'll see if that uh, Red Bull style, I think, is what I heard
Right.
their sporting director say. And well, last time I checked, Red Bull hasn't won too many MLS Cups, so we'll see if this really works. But it's been fantastic for them, and it's been a lot of fun to watch as an outsider. And as a Chicago fan, I'm supposed to dislike St. Louis, but I usually watch them on MLS Season Pass on Apple.
Yeah.
I love watching St. Louis. They're a ton of fun, and just that atmosphere is a ton of fun too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. No, a lot of props to them. I think that's a fantastic effort. So let's go back a little bit more nostalgia here. So, who are your all time favorite MLS players?
Mm. So as far as like all time, Dwayne De Rosario is my favorite player.
Right.
I love DDR. He So I don't like the New England Revolution. If there's one team that I don't want to see win, it's the Revolution. I'm sorry, Revs fans, but the Fire and the Revs had a big playoff rivalry in the mid 2000s when I was really, really starting to get into MLS, and the Revs would always knock out the Fire. It was like 4 years in a row where they ended their season. Well, MLS Cup 2007, Dwayne De Rosario, game-winning goal against the Revolution. That made me very, very happy. And he's just scored some of the best goals in league history. The free kick in 2005, the goal of the year in 2004, the volley. He's just so much fun to watch. And no matter where he played, whether it was, San Jose and Houston or DC, Toronto, I mean, just every year, it was like he had an iconic moment. So Dwayne De Rosario is definitely my favorite player. As far as like current players, I've always loved Dax McCarty. The 3 years that he was with Chicago, I loved it. It was awesome. Favorite Chicago Fire players. I got a soft spot for the guys in the beginning, like CJ Brown, Peter Novak. Obviously Cuauhtemoc Blanco was great. Who else? I loved Chris Rolfe. He was great. I know I'm just listing players right now, but it's fun. I mean, every era there
Yeah.
seems to be a guy that I really get attached to, and sometimes it's for no other reason other than I like watching him play. You know,
Yeah,
he looks fun.
absolutely.
So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. I know I've listed off about 100 guys right there, but
No, it's
yeah,
going to help
it's
my research.
fun to look back on.
I'm going to look up all these players now. It really helps me when people bring out players I've never heard of, and I'm like, "Oh, Chris Brown."
Oh,
I'm going to look up him. Okay, that sounds good.
the
Yeah.
Dwayne Rosario like mixtapes on YouTube of his like highlights are just so great. I love them.
It's fantastic. I mean, this is why I absolutely love getting into the details, getting into history of this sort of thing. Not only does it help me sort of round out my knowledge, but it's just always stories in there. There's always these
Oh yeah,
characters that come out. It's fantastic.
yeah. And I got a lot of them. I just being an MLS fan is it's weird in some sense because it is a niche league. You know, not everyone watches it. And especially 15, 20 years ago in the early 2000s, I mean, you really had to go out of your way to be a fan of this league, to search it, to watch it. And just because I'm kind of weirdly weirdly obsessive like that, like if I get
Mm,
into something, I get into it and I do my homework and research it. And you kind of had to in the beginning to be a fan of this league.
yeah,
And
yeah,
MLS is definitely becoming a lot more visible now and accessible now.
definitely.
But yeah, I've had so much fun, um, with my videos going in and researching the old stories and kind of retelling them. It's been a lot of fun.
Awesome, awesome. On the other side of that coin, who's the biggest villain in your eyes in the
Mm.
MLS history?
Oh man, I uh, I love him as an announcer now. I think he is great, and I think he's been fantastic for soccer. But man, I did not like Taylor Twellman. Taylor Twellman burned the fire so many times. I didn't. I hated him. I hate that he was just kind of that like almost like a pretty boy in MLS and played for the Revolution. And yeah, it was if he did not get hurt, if he didn't suffer the concussions that he did, I think he'd have the record for most goals in MLS because I don't think he was going to go over to Europe. He had a couple offers, like Preston North End, but I think the Revolution turned that down. So I think he would have stayed and playing for the Revolution. And he was kind of one of the faces of the league, and I think for sure if he didn't get hurt, he would have had the record. And would that record have been broken by now? Maybe, but I mean, he just every year it was just pretty consistently double-digit goals, and he was just a menace and just impossible to stop.
Fantastic. I love those. And then heroes and villains conversations. I could go on forever. It's just such fun.
Yeah,
There's so much passion
I
goes
love talking about it too.
around. Good stuff. So towards the end now, we're going to give a couple of quick fire questions. Who do you think's going to win it this year?
I think. Okay, well, let me just start off by saying I totally whiffed on some of my preseason predictions. I thought Toronto was going to win the Supporter Shield.
Do you know what? I did too. I had that.
It's
as one
just
of my
not
best.
happening. I don't know what has gone wrong. I know
Way
CJ got hurt, but everything I looked at their roster, I'm like, this is going to be just dynamite. They're going
I
to
did
beat
too.
LAFC last
Looked at how
year.
they did
Not
last year.
quite.
Looked at the quality. I was like, oh man, these Italians are going to storm the league.
Oh man, it did not happen. And I think who did I pick? I picked Austin to finish number one in the West because I really
Okay.
liked her last year, and
Yeah.
that's not going to happen either. So I think before I give my predictions, let me just say I'm better at telling the narratives, telling the stories of
Okay.
MLS
Yeah.
than predicting who's going to win. If I had to pick right now, who's my pick? I'm probably leaning towards LAFC to win the Shield. I think they are the best team in MLS,
Yeah.
and Cincinnati's been fantastic. I think LAFC is going to end up
Mm.
winning the Shield. I think Bouanga is probably going to get MVP, and I'd probably pick him for his Golden Boot as well right now. there's certain players, especially in MLS, where you could tell that they're just the next level up above everyone else. And Blanca is one of those guys. As far as who's winning MLS Cup, does LAFC do the double? I do worry that maybe they start to fatigue a little bit because they had a long season last year, making it all the way to MLS Cup, and plus they're playing all these games in Champions League. Like eventually something's going to catch up to them. Before my pick in MLS Cup, before the season started, I believe it was Philadelphia over Dallas.
Okay.
I really like how Cincinnati is looking.
Yeah.
And originally I thought that they were going to suffer from some transfers. Brenner is gone.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought Vasquez might leave. But I mean, they've looked really good. New England is a contender. I'll probably say right now, MLS Cup, I'm leaning towards Cincinnati and maybe LAFC.
I like that. Yeah. I'm really, really impressed with Cincinnati. They just look like a complete team. And again, at the start of the season, probably naively, I thought Brenner going, who's a big part of that, and Vasquez, who knows? And then they're not going to. But no, they've absolutely proved that wrong. You've already answered my last question. Who's going to get the Golden Boot? I think with Bouranga. So I'm going to ask you another one instead. I'm going to ask you, who do you side with in what's happened this week? Chiellini or Puz?
Oh. I thought the celebration was a little tacky. U.S. Open Cup. I love the U.S. Open Cup. I think it's a tournament that totally deserves more respect. But it was a round of 16 game, and you're, doing I don't know what you call that celebration, the Messi celebration or the Ronaldo celebration.
Yeah.
But did Chiellini even play that game? Or
no,
it was mostly the young guys. So why is
he was just around
why is he commenting on it?
I think he's been working with the youngsters who did play and that sort of thing. So I assume it's because he was bitter because they were celebrating so hard against his boys, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I don't have a strong opinion either way. I'll probably side with Pooch on this one though. I think Chiellini needs to, calm it down a little bit.
I can see it from both ways, but I think Chiellini needs to chill out a little bit. It's just for fun.
It's funny though. It's one of those things where it's just, that's so MLS.
Yeah,
that's the only way to describe it. That's MLS.
But absolutely, these are the stories. This is what makes the headlines and makes people fall in love with it as well. And like I say, creates the heroes and the villains, and you can take sides. And that's the wonderful thing about it. Football is at the end just a soap opera. It's a TV show and it's entertainment, which I think is is what we're getting. So what we've just as we come to the end now, what are you working on at the moment? What can people look forward to from Danny T Radio?
Well, so the last I moved into this house a year ago, and it has been really tough recording because I've been recording in my bedroom. And with kids, you can't do it at night because they're sleeping. And then if you want to record during the day, sometimes they're crying, sometimes they're this and whatever. So I'm currently building my own studio right now. It's
cool.
Attached to my garage. I've got the walls up, I've got the drywall and the mud splattered on it. I just gotta basically put the primer on, paint it, and decorate it up. So once I get that done, I will, I think, be able to record a lot easier. And my next video is going to be talking about the Apple TV deal again. I talked about it in the beginning, like what to look forward to and what exactly to expect. And now the title of this next video is Becoming Apple President and Fixing MLS Season Pass.
Fantastic. Your titles are always so good, man. They're always so catchy. I love them.
Oh, thank you. And listen, I love Apple TV. I love MLS Season Pass. I think they've done a fantastic job on it, but there's also a lot of complaints, and you hear the same complaints over and over again. So I'm going to try to tackle that in a somewhat realistic way. Like if I really was in charge of it, how I would fix it. So that's the next video I'm going to be working on. But first, I got to fix this studio up. Right now, I'm in the basement right next to my laundry room. So I'm sorry about this setup too.
No, it's absolutely good. I mean, you're here. That's all that matters for me at the
Yeah,
moment. So people can look back at your old stuff anyway while they wait for the new one. But tell people where
there
they
we
can
go.
find you online.
Yeah, so it's just Danny T Radio on Twitter. And I have a TikTok account. It's also Danny T Radio. I've never been great with TikTok. I just my
Yeah.
wife loves that short form content. I've never really been able to consume a lot of it. I have not posted on there in over a month. I'm trying to post more. But yeah, Twitter's the main page at Danny T Radio. And then obviously YouTube, Danny T Radio.
Absolutely, yeah. And I recommend anybody who's watching this who hasn't watched yours, please go and check them out. There's such fantastic videos. I can watch them all day. So all that remains to say is, Danny, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Well, I appreciate it. And I appreciate what you're doing. I think the interviewing, I think it's a great avenue. And I love the direction that you're going as well. So best wishes to you, and I can't wait to see your channel continuing to grow.
Thank you very much. That means a lot to me, man. Thank you. See
Absolutely.
you next time.
Thank you.